everyone, and welcome to the Private Practice Show. So this is our video version of the podcast where I'm so excited to be having some very special guests on to talk about their life in private practice and what private practice has meant for them. So each week we're going to have a new guest on, and they're going to share how they got started in private practice, what their private practice looks like now, what their plans are for the future, and some tips and tricks and everything along the way. So I'm very excited that tonight we have a very special guest who is Farwa Husain. Farwa was a student in both the Start Your Private Practice program, and then she leveled up and joined the Grow Your Private Practice program. And oh my goodness, has she had an incredible, incredible journey. Tonight, she's going to be sharing her story about specializing in private practice and why she decided to specialize and what that has meant for her. So I'm very excited to bring on Farwa. Let me just hit the button here. If you have questions as we're talking, please drop them in the chat and we'll make sure to get those answered as well. So the other thing I wanted to mention, hey Farwa, how's it going?
Hello, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
I know, this is very exciting. So listeners, you may have heard Farwa on my podcast. She was on an episode of the podcast. I think it was episode 212. And in that podcast, you shared your story of working 3 days a week and having 3 kids, right? And that was kind of like the title of the episode and what we talked about. So some people have listened to that episode, but some people didn't get to listen to that episode. So I thought what we could do is to kind of go back to the beginning. And would you mind sharing kind of where you were in life when you started your practice and why did you decide to start it?
Sure. And just a little side note, now I'm down to 2.5 days a week.
Boom, love it.
So my private practice is called One-on-One Speech Therapy, and it's located in Raritan, New Jersey. I specialize in Gestalt Language Processing, and how I got here, I had children and I felt like there was something missing in my life and I wanted to give something back to my community. And I realized I was driving my children around to different services, PT, OT, speech, and being on the other side of the waiting room was a little jarring. And I didn't like the feeling of them just saying all the things that were wrong with my child. And I said, you know what, we have to try something different. Let me just try it. Let me just do it my way. You know what, hopefully I'll just get to help one child. Let me just help one kiddo. And it's grown into this beautiful practice, and I've been doing all the things that I love and all the things that bring me joy, and that entail has brought a community together, and it's helped create this movement of neurodiversity affirming care and support for our families and practitioners around town.
Well, and I love that. And what I love many things about what you just said, but one of them is about you getting to kind of operate within your zone of genius, right? And operate your practice the way that you want to. So can you tell our listeners, like, what were some things in like the traditional setting that you were in before that like didn't sit right with you or that you didn't really like so much so that when you had your own practice, you made different decisions?
Sure. I did not care for having clients back to back to back. It's very difficult for you to switch mindsets between clients, and the fact that you don't get to choose who you're working with. You have to be a generalist if you're working for a school or if you're working for another private practice. So I got an art kid, I got a stuttering kid, I got an apraxia kid. You throw in a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And when you ask for help and you're like, listen, stuttering isn't my thing, they're still on your caseload. So then I'm going out of my way and reaching out to all the specialists and be like, please, can you help me? And that's hard. And at the end of the day, you're just tired and exhausted. And did I do enough? It was always that question of, oh gosh, did I do enough? Did I help enough? So that part was hard. And I took a little break from therapy because I was burnt out. So then I took a break, went and raised my children. When I came back into the field, it was exactly the same. And I feel like it was even worse because it was like client, 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 and the pay was the same. And everything else was the same. So that's what kind of pushed me into the direction of opening up my own private practice. It was mostly about, let me do the services that are effective and that are going to create change.
Yeah. And so to have that deeper impact, right? That's kind of what I hear you saying is that you wanted to, I think we all got into this profession to help people, right? Every single one of us are natural helping people. And that's why we did this. But I think that when you sometimes are in, whether it's schools or hospitals or early intervention or even someone else's private practice, sometimes like you're not the one making the decisions. And the decisions could be about what kind of care you're giving, what the frequency is, all those kind of things. And so when you get to make your own decisions, I think that's when things like the burnout starts to melt away. Was that true for you?
Yeah. And it, you know what? More than the burnout, it gave me a sense of confidence. Like I became who I am now, and I have to thank you for that. I just needed somebody to believe in me. Like when I was a start student, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't think I'll be able to find anybody who would want to come to me. Like, what do I have to offer? I'm just a housewife. I'm just a mom. And then when you shine and you're passionate about something, then it really helps build a community together.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about the community that you're building here in a second. But before we get to that, can you just share a little bit about like what were the early days of your private practice like, right? So you decided to start your practice, you joined the START program, and then what were those like first couple of clients like for you?
I took on everyone. I took on anybody that was willing to come on. And I was like, oh, you want to come with me? Come on. I'll come to your house. Oh, you want me to do this for you? Sure, I'll do this. And I realized how hard it was. I was like, wait, this is harder than it was working for somebody else. I was like, this isn't why I did this. Let's try again. And then I just started learning about Gestalt language processing. I started applying those strategies, and I was like, ooh, I like this. This clicks. I can understand this. They're making so much progress. Oh, I want to do this. And then that kind of helped shape where I am now.
Well, and really the whole neurodiversity movement is, it seems like a couple years, right? That this has been like a big thing. Like, I was in grad school in the early 2000s, and like the stuff that we were doing with kids is like the opposite of what people are doing with kids now. So I can only imagine how much more effective and how much just better for everybody the type of services that you're delivering now are.
Yeah, when I started, there wasn't a lot of neurodiversity affirming clinicians, and there was no one exclusively doing Gestalt language processing or had even heard of it in my area. So I started connecting to other therapists that were doing it, and that's how it kind of came to being. Initially, it was a lot of, oh, you're not doing the right stuff. There's not enough evidence. There's not enough this. There's enough that. I was like, let me show you. Come on in.
Well, and I love how you also kind of talked about that transition of in the beginning of your practice, you saw anyone who you felt comfortable or competent to treat. And that's actually what I teach people to do in the START program because I want people to build their confidence. I want them to build their caseload, to start having some money coming in, right? But over time, you do start to kind of think about, okay, maybe I don't want to see all of these different types of clients, or maybe I don't want to travel to all of these parts of town. I just want to, be in this one area. Or maybe as far as service delivery, maybe I don't want to do in-person services. I only want to do teletherapy or, whatever your decisions are. But one of the hesitations that I hear all the time from people who are nervous about specializing is they say, oh my gosh, how could I say no to all of these clients? Like, what if nobody hires me and I have no clients, right? Can you speak to people who might be thinking that?
Yeah, so I'm going to say I want you to switch your mindset. I want you to come in with a growth mindset and abundance mindset. There are so many children out there that need services, and there is going to be somebody out there for you. And honestly, if 100 kids showed up at your door, you would be overwhelmed because that's the caseload you currently have at the schools, right? When I was in the school at 65 in one, 55 in another, and you're trying to juggle it all. That's not our goal. It's good, effective services where we're practicing at the top of our license, and you want to feel good at the end of the day. So I would say don't even worry about that. Just plug along and chug along and do things that bring you joy, because parents will feel that. Your clients will feel that. The adult population that you're working with will feel that. And at the end of the day, we want that connection.
Totally. And I know when I first started my practice, I made what I thought was a great decision that turned out to be a huge mistake. And it has to do with what we're talking about tonight. So when I very first started my practice, I made like flyers and postcards and all these like my website, all these marketing materials. And I went to the ASHA website. This is a little embarrassing now, but anyway, I went to the ASHA website and I looked down every diagnosis I thought I could possibly treat, right? I'm an adult neuro person, so I'm like, I do Parkinson's, I do traumatic brain injury, I do MS, I do like all, and then I like threw in pediatric feeding because I had a pediatric feeding placement. Anyway, so I wrote all these things and I was like, everybody's going to want to hire me. This is great. I can do absolutely everything. And I sent out these flyers and postcards, and guess what? Nothing happened. Nobody called because people don't necessarily want a clinician who is like a jack of all trades that can do every single thing, because then people think, but what does she do well? Right? Or like people then they want to have their child maybe or spouse or whoever, maybe not by like an expert specialist, but you want to be confident that the person who's going to be working with your loved one, it has the skills to be able to do it.
Yeah, and then you're also investing in yourself. You're investing in your continuing education. You're investing in things that are really going to make you passionate about it. So it's a win-win situation. But then again, we do need generalists. So if you are a generalist and you're like, I don't know, like I kind of like it all, do that because that's what's bringing you joy. And you love all things speech language pathology. So start there. So we're not saying you have to do it this way. You have to do what's right for you.
Very true. And another thing I just thought of, which, when we're talking about, differentiating yourself from other practices, that's part of what you're doing too. So when you decide that you want to specialize in a particular population or niche or treatment approach or whatever it is, you're also kind of like having that be your area where other practices in your area that previously you might have thought of as air quotes competition, now they know, hey, if I've got a Gestalt language processor, and maybe they're not as comfortable with autism, and right, maybe they don't have any openings or whatever, they're going to send that client to you. And then Farwa, probably when you get, let's say, maybe a feeding client or motor speech or something, you may be like, oh, I'm going to send them to that practice, right?
And even if I get a Gestalt language processor, I will send them to a different practice that I know has a better fit. So if you are a bilingual Spanish speaking family that also has a Gestalt language processor, there's somebody better out there for you. So it's not about just your own specialty. And the beautiful thing is I've been able to build a network here of clinicians that are doing the same thing as me, as well as a lot of other different things that I know are doing better than me, and I want to learn from them, and I want to send clients that way. So there's honestly no competition in this area because I don't see it as a competition. So if you're coming and be like, ooh, that's my competition, let's just re-establish, what competition is.
Yeah, totally. Because we also all know that there are so many kids and adults who are going without services, or who are stuck on wait lists, or maybe they are getting some, services in the school, but because their school therapist has a million kids on the caseload, right? They're not able to devote the amount of attention. So we know that there are tons of people who need our help. And so this is why there's still like plenty of room for people to be jumping into private practice, because there's such a huge need.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so can you share a little bit about your like trajectory for your practice, right? So you started in the beginning, you were seeing, whatever kind of clients were coming your way, then you kind of started to specialize. But what did that actually look like from like, you started with one client and then you kind of slowly grew from there. Paint a little picture for our audience about what did your growth look like?
Oh my goodness. So growth looks different for everyone. For me, I wanted to grow as a clinician and I didn't necessarily want to grow the caseload. I love teaching and I love talking about Gestalt language processing. So my growth went in the direction of doing in-services. It went to the direction of doing webinars and teaching and I have a wonderful caseload that helps me support that. But for me, that is the growth. And my growth I wanted to grow my community. I wanted to grow the knowledge base on Gestalt language processing. And that doesn't mean financial growth. It is also personal growth that I was looking for.
Yeah. Absolutely. And thank you for mentioning that growth looks different to different people, because I think sometimes when people think about growth in private practice, like they basically think about multidisciplinary practices, right? Or like multiple locations, or kind of growing bigger outward. But I really like how you talked about growing inward, right? With your knowledge and expertise, but also being able to grow in very specific ways, like in terms of some of these additional streams of income, these, connections with other people in your area. Can you talk a little bit about those streams of income and how they're working for you?
Of course. So I love doing webinars. So I provide a lot of webinars. I do in-services in the schools. I also have a Connect and Play program, which is a summer immersive program that brings me so much joy. And it's an interdisciplinary approach and a holistic approach to working with our neurodivergent and autistic individuals. I also am going to be launching a product in April. And I started another company called Gestalt Goodness, which will be launching in Mbasla. So there's a lot of different ways you can take it. And the beautiful thing is when we think about our services and when we're on our own, we can do whatever we want. We are not stuck to a box. Like in my mind, I always thought you have to work for a school or you have to work for a different private practice. I never realized that you can create passive streams of income. You can create multiple streams of income. That was never taught to us. We're not business people. So it requires a lot of mentorship. It requires a lot of open-mindedness, a lot of innovation, and that's kind of fun. And now I realize how much I love the business side. Like this is exciting. This is new. This is different.
Yeah, because you got bitten by the bug, didn't you?
You did it. It's all you.
Well,
I was like,
well,
I don't know if anybody wants
I
to.
there. But I think that, this is one of those things where all of a sudden you get into it and you're like, oh my God, I love this, right? This also happened to you with Gestalt language processing, right? You discovered it and you went all in, right? And people who are watching or listening to this, maybe you discovered, maybe it's like lactation consulting that now you're completely obsessed with, or a certain, or myofunctional therapy, or whatever it is, right? That you have discovered and now you like kind of like are a low-key obsessed with it. Well, I promise the same thing can happen with business if you learn how to think about business the right way. When I first started in the profession, some of you have heard the story, but my dad's a businessman and he always wanted me to go into business. And so then when I decided to go into speech therapy instead, he's like, well, maybe you'll have a private practice one day. And I was like, okay, Dad, like one day, maybe. But business is boring. I don't really think I want to do that, right? But all of a sudden, I had this opportunity to start a practice. I did. And then I became really interested in business. And for those of you who know my book collection in the back here is 100% business books, right? So I think that the reason why I bring that up is because I want people to realize that your identity can change over time, right? So you will still have the identity of speech language pathologist, occupational therapist, whatever you are, but now you can take on the identity of of being neurodiversity affirming, right? You probably were that like at your core before there was a movement, but maybe you didn't have that title to attach to it. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
And you know what? I never met anybody that owned a private practice, that had their own business, that was a woman, that was a brown woman doing this or a black woman doing this. None of this was ever in front of me. So I never knew that that was an option. So when I took that leap of faith, it was, okay, she's going to sink. And you know what? She'll come back to the house. At the end of the day, you got your children. So it's wonderful to find other women, strong women that are there to support you, to mentor you, and to kind of guide you, because that was what I needed at that time. At that time, I didn't know myself, right? Who was I? I was just Farwa, who's a mom, and I was just Farwa, who's really good at taking care of people. And my family and friends were joking. They'd be like, okay, you're going to start a private practice. What are you good at, serving snacks? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the best snack cart there is.
Look at you now. You got way more than a snack cart. My goodness.
But you know what? At the end of the day, those are my strengths. I'm really good at taking care of people. I'm really good at that. And at my core, that's who I am, and that's what I'm going to lean into. And I'm going to know who I am for that. And parents appreciate that. I feel like other clinicians appreciate that because I'm not trying to fight with anybody. I'm not trying to take away your clients. In fact, let me give you some. So it's been wonderful to set up my private practice because the other clinicians have reached out to me that are starting, and I'm like, here's some clients, let me help you. So it's been fun.
I love that. I love that. Now, I've seen some amazing, Instagram stories and whatnot about some of these, meet and greet kind of networking events that you've been holding. So, can you tell our listeners about that?
Oh my gosh, Anna, it's so fun. So when I started doing the private practice and working with Gestalt Language Processors, there wasn't anybody here doing this. There wasn't anybody in New Jersey. I found Nellie Flynn, March Blanc, who is the incredible researcher on Gestalt Language Processing, had connected me to Nellie Flynn. Her and I were the only ones in the state, I would think. So we went around town doing these presentations. We went to New York and we spoke at NJSHA, the New Jersey State Association. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we just had, that's the things I'm thinking myself, just a place for clinicians to come to and talk about. So I put it out there and they showed up. The clinicians showed up. So we recently just did a meetup in my office and I invited anybody from the tri-state area. We had a clinician come from Philadelphia. We had some come from New York, a lot from New Jersey. I ran a sound bath. We got a chance to connect, experience something new, something different, talk about Gestalt language processing, talk about things that we're having difficulty with, be able to connect with others and build a community and connection. We always think our children need connection. The kids that we're working with need connection and build to trust, but we as clinicians need that. We need people to connect with and be like, oh, you're doing the same thing as me. And feel empowered and feel good about ourselves and learn. So it's been a great experience. I've been doing things with my heart and it's just been fun.
Well, and I love that too because you're absolutely right. People do need connection, right? And now in this kind of post-COVID world, people are really craving in-person connection too, I feel like. And so I love when people, whether it's Gestalt language processing or whether it's, private practice owners or whatever it is, you do tend to feel a little isolated in whatever your area is, that when you all of a sudden get in a room, either a physical room or even, a digital room too, but when you get in the room with people who understand like what it is that you like and you like the same thing, like magic happens, right? And so I love that you're doing these, and I can only imagine that they're going to continue to get, more and more popular, but also just like really good from that networking perspective so people know where to send clients.
And you know what? The beautiful thing is it helps create authenticity between yourself and then creates a spark of innovation throughout. So another clinician was like, I'm going to do this later. There's some now popping up throughout the country, which is so cool. And I love that. I actually had a parent run a drumming circle in Pakistan after listening and hearing about our drumming circle that we have in our Connect and Play program. So you would think, oh, I'm just doing this because I know there's so much research out there that's going to help brain development, and then it's helping somebody else across the world. It just blew my mind. I'm like, wow, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to help one person.
Well, right. But like your impact, right? Like I think this is the thing that people don't realize in the beginning when they're first getting started is people think about like, well, I can hopefully get like a handful of clients and I can really help these people. But once you start growing your private caseload, you also start doing like in services and trainings, and now you're doing networking events. Like think of how your impact and income, actually probably too, but impact has just exponentially grown as a result of just what you said, which is just following your heart and doing the things that you're interested in that you know that other people are interested too.
And then you can become a better advocate, and then you can empower others too. So I just recently had a friend come over and I helped her set up her business online and her EIN number and everything, because she's like, Farwa, I've been watching you do this for the last few years. Can you help me? And she just started her housekeeping business and her home organization business because that's something that she really loved. So You know what? It's really cool to be able to do this for everyone and to see everybody thrive and to see everybody enjoy it. I mean, I couldn't be more grateful.
Well, and I also want to go back to what you said about role models, right? And like, if we think about another profession, which is psychology, right? Psychologists, any movie or TV show or book or anything you watch about psychologists, they're always in private practice, right? Unless they're working in like, psychiatric ward or something in a hospital. Pretty much, they're in a private office, right? And so psychologists have tons of examples of role models in real life and in the media for private practice, but we haven't, right? And so it's so important for people to be trailblazing this path and showing up online and showing up on all these things and saying, listen, this is my story. And particularly people from different races and cultures and everything else, it's even more important to be able to say, like, listen, like, I did this and you can do it too, right? So I also really think that that's a really important message to be sending to people.
And you know what? My husband jokes about this. He goes, "Your profession's way too nice. Like, girls are so nice at this." Because I'll be like, "Hey, can you help me? Or what do you think?" And I have yet to have a clinician say no to me. They're like, "Oh, yeah, let me tell you this. Here's a tip. Here's this. This is what I'm using." It's been such a wonderful experience when you put yourself authentically out there. Like, I need some help. I'm not good at this.
Yeah, totally. And then you find out over time, either you get better at it, right? It's just kind of that low confidence thing where then you try it and you do it again and again, and now all of a sudden you are confident with it. Or you get to a point where you're like, it's okay that I'm not good at that. Either I let it go, or maybe you hire somebody to do it for you, right? And so there's all kinds of ways that you can go with that. So my kind of last question as we're starting to wrap up is, what do you see for the future of your private practice?
Oh gosh, this is such a fun question. And um, you know what? I want to do more outreach. I want to continue to do education. I want to establish our Connect and Play program and make it a place where it's internationally everybody comes to because it brings so much value and I'm so passionate about it. And I want to see Gestalt goodness thrive.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait for that. And I'm also so proud of you for expanding your business and really growing your business in a way that works for you, for your family, for the communities that you serve. And so I think that is really awesome. If you had any like parting words of wisdom or advice for people who have been maybe on the fence about private practice, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to just get started because you're making an investment in yourself. I shared the story on our podcast. Now I'm going on year 3, right, of private practice. So 3 years ago, I was watching your free webinar, and a friend from graduate school or undergrad sent me a message and was like, "Hey, Farwa, you're on this. We're both SLPs." She was like, "You know what? I'm just going to figure this out." And I was like, I don't have time for this and I don't know how to do this. I'm just going to take the course. Well, now I'm at a place where I can create businesses and see the clients, and she's currently still in the school system. And she's like, "Gosh, I wish I did that." So don't make it like, "Gosh, I wish I did that." Just try it, and you're not going to fail because you're betting on yourself. And that's the best one you can bet on, right?
100%. Totally agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And, clinicians invest in themselves all the time, right? Think of how much money we all invested in graduate school, right? And undergrad, right? And how much people invest in their continuing clinical education and everything else, right? It's just so important too to invest in that business education if you don't have a business background, which most people don't, right? So thank you so much for coming on and being on the show, for sharing your journey, and for just continuing to be an amazing example of someone who started their practice, who bet on themselves, and has just been thriving, and truly the sky's the limit for you and for your companies and your clients and everything else. Can you share, where can people learn more about you?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at one on one speech therapy or online at oneonOneSpeechTherapy.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on, Farwell.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye.